and we will get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is Food Safety Basics from Second Harvest. To go over our program overview, today we're going to talk about food safety. First, I would like to do some introductions, some housekeeping, and then we're going to dive straight into what building a food safety culture is. And we're going to go through 4 steps to food safety, the 4 most important things to look at. Food safety is a journey. So we're going to go through a lot of material really quick today. We're going to touch later on some tips for safe serving. And lastly, we're going to discuss food date labels in Canada, which is a dear issue to us here at Second Harvest. And I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, but I would try to leave some time at the end so we can go through some questions and answers and comments if you have them. With this being said, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local and Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this place home. Please join me in acknowledging the harms and mistakes of the past and consider how we can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you for your time there. For those of you who are not familiar with Second Harvest, we are Canada's largest food rescue organization and expert in perishable food recovery. Our dual mission is no waste, no hunger, and that is our commitment to the planet that is both environmental and community focused. We have a rich history of 36 years of intercepting and rescuing surplus unsold food across the food supply chain and redistributing this food to nonprofits to serve their communities in need. Lastly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Norberto Cáceres, and I am the Harvest Kitchen Manager for Second Harvest, and I will be your host today. I have 20 years of experience working as a chef, and so food safety is second nature to me. I will talk to you folks, hopefully to communicate some of this knowledge. I wanted to remind you, some folks, I mentioned this before we started, but your video is muted and your video is turned off and you are muted, but we do welcome your feedback, questions. If you're having any technical problems, please reach out to us through the chat. You see you can direct your comments to somebody in specific or to everyone, so everybody will see what you're writing. My colleague Krish is available to answer any questions or help you through this process as to not interrupt the flow of my presentation, and then other folks can continue listening. My dearest colleague here, Krish, is about to set a poll for you folks to take the temperature where we're at, and then we'll continue. Take 10-15 seconds to answer this, and then we'll go on. Right, that is most people answering. We'll give another 10 seconds if you want to answer. And to remind you that this session is going to be recorded, so it will be available in our library in the future. Okay. We can end this poll. Krish? I see we have a fair understanding here. This is good news. I won't be talking in vain. Okay. So with this being said, then let's get on to our material, please. First, I wanted to talk to us about creating a culture of safe food handling. What is a culture? A culture is a set of beliefs and values that are shared by members of the community. So basically, everybody who will be using the kitchen or in charge of the kitchen, be it your teenage children, auntie, nona, whoever, executive chef, whoever, this is your team of people who are going to be in the kitchen. We all need to be on the same place. This is culture. So we're going to look at first that everyone on the team is on board and works towards the same goal. We're going to look second at the leadership. The leadership is responsible for providing the team all the resources necessary, be it training, be it chemicals, be it disposable gloves, giving us the resources so we can work towards a food safety culture. And lastly, the team. So everybody who is working in the kitchen is responsible for executing this or upholding this culture by following the safety procedures that are in place. So we need everyone to be on board, we need the team to execute this, and we need the leadership to give us resources. With all of this support, we can create a culture and then we all move forward together. If we are all in different places, we cannot have a culture of food safety because some people will work unsafely and some people work safely and will never reach our goal. So the first thing is to reassess. This is a good moment for us to look at our own kitchens or teams and see where everybody stands. Is there somebody that we have to bring along with more training? Is there chemicals that we need to purchase? Is there different procedures in place we need to set up? So this is a good time to understand how if we start from a culture of food safety, we can move forward in a better way. For here, I would like to see some answers on the chat box. Get your fingers moving. I would like to see where we are with understanding who are the most vulnerable people to foodborne illness in our communities. Why don't you go ahead and type on the chat box, who do you think is the people at most risk in our communities? Yeah, I see immune compromised children. I see seniors and children. Yes, the elderly, of course. Yes, we're all in the same. Exactly, poverty stricken. That could be compromising our immune system if we're not eating well, if we're stressed. Of course, homeless. Yes, same. Pregnant. I see somebody put. All right, this is fantastic. You guys all in this and on the same boat. These are the groups that are most at risk. Infants and young children, pregnant women, elderly people, people taking certain medications that might compromise your immune system, or if you have a weakened immune system due to a variety of conditions. As I saw in the chat box, you folks have fantastic ideas. So we've also seen this, let's say if we deviate from food safety and we see an aspect that is compromising all of us right now, we see that the same with the pandemic. We see that they're the same groups that we also need to be taking extra precaution in order to keep safe. So now that we know, now that everybody is on board, so we have a culture of food safety and we know who we have to protect the most or put the most care on, we move on to our 4 staples that we summoned today for you for steps to food safety. First, keep it clean. So we are going to talk about personal hygiene, hand washing, cleaning, and sanitizing. Second, store it right. We're going to talk about the temperature danger zone. We're talking about stock rotation. Third, keep it separate. We're going to talk about cross-contamination and different tips in the kitchen to keep things separate. And third, cooking and cooling tips. My Latino accent came out there, I'm sorry. For that, we are going to be talking about the use of a thermometer and different techniques of how to cook, cool, thaw, reheat food properly, taking into consideration temperature, time, and the factors that are involved in that. So really quick then, let's get started with our point number 1. Step number 1, it's keep it clean. When we talk personal hygiene, as food operators, and again, be it this in your house, if you're in charge of your home cooking, if it's a community center, a drop-in kitchen, a shelter, a restaurant, whoever is the food operator, so the person or persons producing the food, need to take special care of their personal hygiene, because you are going to be in direct contact with this food all through your day. I'd like to point here to this graph. You see that the parts that are marked in red, the hands, the mouth and nose, and the hair, are the most dangerous, more potentially dangerous parts of our body. We also learned a lot more about this aspect going through a pandemic. They tell us constantly to wash our hands. Remember, we used to do the sneeze in the sleeve and cough in the sleeve. Now we have to wear masks to keep all these droplets of water going into potentially somebody else, or potentially the food that I'm about to eat in our case. And the hair, as disgusting as it is to find a hair in your food, the hair itself is not what is dangerous, but what is dangerous to you that can create foodborne illness is bacteria that lives in your scalp, or mine, or whoever, in a human scalp. It's not, it doesn't have anything to do with anything in your life other than you're a human. But this can be potentially dangerous, so usually hats or hairnets are required in the kitchen to prevent this. The other thing I would like to bring attention to folks here is soiled clothing, uniforms, or aprons. This is, again, your first barrier between your body and the food, and it's very important that we keep it clean. If you put a clean apron in the morning, and with that same clean apron, you just wipe some raw chicken off the counter, you're going to be wearing raw chicken for the rest of your shift. So always be very aware, and we're going to talk a little bit about cross-contamination. So always be aware of what touches what, and that will simplify a lot of your thinking process to see what's safe and what's not. Okay. The second most important thing when we talk about cleanliness is hand washing. As some of you folks who already work in kitchens or have in the past, you know that you will wash your hands 30 to 50 times a shift. Your hands are going to be raw and cracked and not look pretty, but it's essential that your hands are clean at all times and that you're always aware of what they touch. So very quickly, to go through this procedure, we're going to go through the redundancy, but the procedure of hand washing here. So step number 1, wet your hands. Step number 2, apply soap. 3, scrub. Special emphasis on this one. Please spend about 20 seconds, which is, you can sing this happy birthday song to yourself. Every time you go to hand washing, you'll be like 2,000 years old by the end of the week. But very important that you scrub between your fingers, up into your wrist, maybe your forearms as well, depends on what you were doing. Underneath your jewelry. Again, don't use a lot of jewelry if you're cooking in a kitchen. It's potentially dangerous as well. So spend a good 20 seconds like really working under your nails, between your fingers, all the cracks in your skin. Then you're going to rinse with hot water. You're going to dry your towels, hopefully with contactless machines. And the last point I wanted to put some emphasis on here is turning off the water with that paper towel used to dry in your hands. And again, this is another reference to cross-contamination. When I came to wash my hands, when I went to step number 1, I came to wash my hands for a reason. There was something in my hands that I needed to get rid of. And I opened that tab, water, with my hand. I washed, I got rid of whatever I needed to get rid of after a good hand washing practice. And by the time I'm done, I close that tab, if I do it with my hand, and recontaminate my hand, right? So if I came with some E. coli into washing my hands. I touch the tap to open it. I wash my hands. I get rid of the E. coli. When I close the tap, I touch that E. coli infested handle. So something to think about. You can close the water with that paper towel. What else is something that everybody touches with their hand dirty into the washroom? A doorknob. Doorknobs are disgusting, right? Everybody touches them, especially going into the washroom or coming out if somebody didn't wash their hands properly. So a good practice is to use that same towel to close the water, open the door, throw the towel away, and then you are contactless. Or open the doors, pushing with your legs or your knees. A lot of kitchen operations actually are operated the sinks with your knee, so your hands never touch anything. Anyway, so hand washing. As we continue talking about clean, keep it clean, I wanted to make a distinction between clean and sanitized. As you see here, this is the exact same photo. One of them is clean, one of them is sanitized. You cannot tell the difference to the naked eye. Unless you walk around your kitchen with a microscope, you will not know. So clean means free from visible soil. I can wipe all my counters with just warm water and a towel, right? But that doesn't kill salmonella, trichinosis, E. coli, none of the things that we are looking to prevent by keeping a kitchen clean. So we focus on sanitation. That means that it's free from harmful levels of potentially hazardous bacteria or contamination. So very important to know the distinguish between something clean and something sanitized. Something sanitized means that I am not going to get sick if I lick that counter. So now that we have brought sanitizing into our realm of knowledge, I wanted to make a quick note here about three players in the sanitation process that are essential. First is the proper amount of chemicals. The three most common chemicals used in kitchens are chlorine, iodine, and quaternary ammonium. Chlorine and quats, or quaternary ammonium, are the most common and most affordable ones used all across the board. Iodine, for those who don't know, is that orange or red stuff that they paint on you when you're about to have surgery or when you get stitches. And I haven't seen it in 20 years. I haven't seen it in a single kitchen, but I have seen different variations of chlorine and quaternary chemicals. Before I continue, the single most important part of this slide is to the bottom right, and it reads, always follow manufacturer's instructions. So this, I'm going to give you some guidelines, but I know for a fact that every manufacturer has different instructions on how to handle their product. Always follow those instructions. You can not prepare the chemical right and it doesn't have the desired effect, so it will not be sanitizing, it would just be cleaning maybe. Or you can do it too much and it can be actually toxic for human consumption. Okay, so always do not follow any of the instructions on this page, but always follow your manufacturer's instructors. The other player, we have chemical. The second player is the water temperature. Again, it varies with each product, and the chemical reaction is different with different temperatures. I've learned that the hard way, believe me. So 45 degrees is an average temperature that we use because that's the hottest that our hands can stand. But it's not necessarily what the manufacturer needs their chemical to be diluted at, okay? So pay attention there. And then lastly, there is contact time. Contact time is the amount of time that the product or my dishes or whatever I'm trying to sanitize is going to be immersed in the solution. 2 minutes, again, average. Sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 5 minutes. So always please pay attention to the right specifications to your product. Then we have this self-explanatory 3-sink compartment cleaning method. This is the most common and easy to execute safe dishwashing, especially if you have an industrial kitchen. Most industrial kitchens have either 3 sinks laid out like this or 2 sinks laid out like this, very big sinks. If you only have 2 sinks, you can do processes 1 and 2 in the same sink. You are going to have to you're going to have to clean your water, like change your water more often. But let's go through this very quickly. The first step is scraping into your compost the leftovers that are on the plate. Then on the first sink, you're going to have detergent and hot water, and this is for washing. On the second sink, you're only going to have hot water, and this is for rinsing. And on your third sink, you're going to have a solution that it's for sanitizing purposes. There is different formulas you see here, but again, do not take my word for this. Please follow your manufacturer's instructions. They're very helpful. And the one also step that I wanted to put special attention to here is the drain or air dry. What happens with this is if we dry things with a towel, and I have to dry 100 dishes, I dry one, I dry two, the third one I dry wasn't really sanitized properly. For whatever reason, had a speckle of salmonella left on it. And dish number 3, I dried with my towel, and then I continue washing, drying the 100 dishes that I had. So 97 dishes are going to be contaminated. Instead of if I air dry them, they never come in contact with each other, right? So it's just one step that helps you always stay safe without thinking about what touched what, right? Just have things not touch each other, or have something touch one and then touch the other one, which is basically touching each other. Fantastic. We're moving on to step number 2. Step number 2 was store it right. If there is one thing that I would like you to remember is keep hot foods hot and cold foods cold. Very simple. This is very simple to remember. And then you can work on this little thermometer that you see on the side here that has this red marker. This range is called the temperature danger zone. It goes from 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. If you think about it, 4 degrees Celsius is the temperature of your fridge. So anything that is refrigerated is outside of that range, the temperature danger zone. And everything above 60, something that you can't hold in your hand because it's too hot, is also not allowing bacteria to grow and reproduce so rapidly. Within this range, the temperature danger zone, somewhere between 20 and 40, which is the most comfortable. Think about what's the most comfortable weather for us humans, right? Well, I'm subtropical, so I like it warmer. But between 20 and 40 is the most dangerous part of this zone. Bacteria grows and reproduces every 20 minutes to a point that after 4 hours, food can be 4 hours of being in this range. Food can be potentially like really harmful for us. So refrigeration, so if it's cold, it stays cold. If it's hot, it stays hot. The next about storing it right, I wanted to make a little note on stock rotation. We in the industry use a system called FIFO. You see there, it's an acronym for first one in, first one out. And it's very simple. If you bring a product in that is new, it goes to the back of the shelf, right? And then you use the oldest product that you had first because it moves forward, right? If I buy 1 milk a week and this week I put my milk on the shelf, and then I didn't use it all, but next week I put another milk and I put it in front of that one and I don't use it all. And then next week I bring another one and I put it in front. I have a 3-week-old half a milk in the very back that I'm never going to get by. It's going to be garbage. You're going to lose money, or potentially somebody's going to drink it and have a really bad experience. So stock rotation is essential for you to keep control over whatever you have and making sure that food is rotating and going and fluid through your operation. You always have new stuff. Very quick anecdotes. One of my first restaurants that I worked in was an Italian trattoria. And when I go into the fridge, the walk-in fridge, it was almost completely empty. And then the chef at the time, told me, this is the sign of fresh food, right? Everything that comes in goes out before new food comes in. So we're always rotating, right? I always run out of stuff before I order again. Anyway. Again, for storage, and I just wanted to make a little quick note here on an industrial refrigeration unit. This does not look like your house fridge, but I did think that it was a nice example of how to think about where things go in your fridge. You will see here at the very top is there's a sandwich, ready to eat, fully cooked, very safe food. At the very bottom of this fridge, there's a raw chicken, which we can consider maybe some of the most potentially hazardous products we can have in the kitchen, right? The idea for this is that if I put my ready-to-eat food at the very top, there is very little chances that something more dangerous, be it raw fish or raw chicken or ground beef or whatever it is, there's less chances if it's at the very top to drip, splash, leak right onto my ready-to-eat food. If I had the sandwich underneath the chicken and the chicken drips onto the sandwich, now my sandwich is contaminated, right? But being at the very top of your fridge, there's a lot less chances. So again, it just makes you think of where things go. You always identify the most dangerous product and the least dangerous product, and you try to keep them as separate as possible. Moving on to step number 3, keep it separate. And this photo that I put here is not the right photo. I mean, it's the right photo for bringing the example up, but you will see that there's raw, maybe pork chops on the same board that there is some vegetables that take, you know, those are asparagus and they take what? 5 minutes to cook. Nothing is killed in 5 minutes, yeah? So, so that is a really bad example, but it brings up what is cross-contamination, right? And we talked about this when we discussed hand washing, and we talked about the doorknob. Remember how we transfer back, and the definition is right there for you to see. The transfer of harmful substances or microorganisms from food to food is a direct transfer, or from food to operator, or from food to surfaces, and then from those surfaces to another food. So basically keep things separate. And again, one thing that I like to think about here that simplifies the thought is what touches what. Always think about that. What touched this cutting board? Well, I know that some pork chops touched it, so then I shouldn't be using anything that is ready to eat or that takes very little cooking time. I will not make my salad on the same cutting board that I cut my chicken before I start cooking my curry, right? So always keep in mind what touches what. It's a very simple thought. And as you start exercising through the kitchen, now I know that my apron touched raw chicken and I don't want to lean on that other counter, or that my knife I used for deboning a lamb chop, and so now I don't want to eat it to cut a cake for my child, right? So always think about what touches what and the different potentially dangerous things that can happen with those contacts. If we move on to step number 4, if we move, I wanted to make a note on our previous slide. In my house, I know in the industry we have color-coded cutting boards, so there will be different boards for different things, and this also helps you stay safe, right? A yellow cutting board would be for chicken, a blue cutting board for the ocean, and a white cutting board for bread, and green cutting board for vegetables. I don't have color-coded vegetable cutting boards in my house or in many social service agencies that I worked through the years. But you can have a mental note, like I only use this cutting board for certain purposes. Or if you have somebody with an allergy, right? I only use this cutting board to chopping nuts, but I never use this other cutting board because somebody has an allergy. So you can have more than one cutting board and have designated uses for each of them to help you stay safe. So I forgot to mention that. Now we go into step number 4, and I wanted to put this table out here. Again, the single most important part of this slide is to the bottom right. I want to emphasize that you need to follow your local public health guidelines. I know for a fact, after 20 years of cooking in this country, that some of these numbers may vary between one health department and the next. Not a lot, but maybe 1-2 degrees or maybe 5 seconds, right? So always be in compliance with your local public health department. Okay, do not take this slide as a guide for anything. It's just an example to call to see that every different food has a minimum internal temperature. And this is not the temperature of the oven or the water, it's the minimum internal temperature of the product. Has to reach, let's say, a whole chicken has to reach 82 degrees Celsius and stay there for 15 seconds minimum. And we know that this will maximize the eradication of salmonella on the chicken, right? Like the salmonella is very dangerous. It occurs in raw chicken. We need to get it to certain temperature for a certain amount of time in order for us to kill the bacteria. Every product has a different standard minimum internal temperature. You see at the bottom, there's eggs. If you could connect to 62 degrees, whatever it says there, you would have a hard-boiled egg. We know that we eat mayonnaise, which is raw egg. We eat hollandaise sauce, which is like 30% cooked egg, custards and stuff like that. So, you know, when you write the exam, you know exactly what they want to hear, but there is other realities. Same with pork. We haven't had trichinosis in Canada for like 25, 30 years. So it's okay to eat a medium rare pork chop. We do find trichinosis in Canada now in wild and game, like in bears and deer and stuff like that. But anyway, so you're always going to look to your public health for advice and the specifications to your area when you are looking at your minimal internal temperatures. When we do this in person, I like to do this exercise. It's great because the thermometer is going to be the single most useful tool for you in the kitchen, taking into consideration all these practices, especially when you're cooking. If I'm cooking for 2 people and I undercook my product and somebody gets sick, 2 people got sick. But if I'm cooking for 5,000 people, then I can have like really major implications if I don't do my job properly. So when you're industrial cooking, you always have a thermometer at hand. I just brought mine here to show you this really quick. This is a regular thermometer, as you see there. And it's you can buy these at the dollar store, any kitchen supply store, or they come in electronic version. It's the same thing. These are much easier to use, faster. These maybe 20, 30 bucks. The regular stuff, 5 to 10 bucks, I'm gonna say. What I wanted to show you here is you need to have your thermometer calibrated all the time, especially if you use these mechanical ones. And you can calibrate it to 0 degrees or 100 degrees, right? Those are the temperatures that we know the markers of. If you are at the sea level, and I hope that there are some folks here who are not, so they come from far. But if you're at sea level, you can do it on boiling water, right? It'll boil at 100 degrees. It's just a little harder to do this process when you have like steam come to your hands and like splatter of boiling water. So we go to 50% ice, 50% water, which creates 0 degrees Celsius temperature. So fill up a container with ice, like a glass or something like that, and then top it up with water. That's your 50-50 mix. And then the sleeve that comes with the thermometer becomes a wrench, right? So if I lower this part all the way to the end, I have a wrench, right? And there is a nut at the bottom of these. I don't know if you can see, but there's a nut at the very bottom. So basically I put my wrench into the nut, right? And I submerge it in my water and I look. If it doesn't say 0 degrees, it might say 4, and I move it to 0, right? And this is actually very simple to do, and you probably have to do it, I'm gonna say once a week. You have to do it if you dropped your thermometer, if you clanked it against something, if you reached extreme temperatures, high or low extreme temperatures. So these little guys need to be calibrated constantly, but they're fantastic tools. The last thing I wanted to show you is that it has in red the temperature danger zone. So it's very easy to see if the food is within the range that is most dangerous for me. I need to get either cool it down and get it above, below, or heat it up and get it above. Fantastic. When we talk about cooling food, we also need to think about how do we do this by spending the least amount of time in that range that it's so dangerous, the temperature danger zone. So a large roast or a big pot of chili or soup can take hours to cool down to a safe temperature for me to put in the fridge. So we can look at some practices, which if it takes hours to cool down, then what's going to happen is that it sits on the temperature danger zone as it cools down through this range, but spending way too much time, and it might bacteria is growing and reproducing freely during this period, right? So we want to make sure that we manage temperature and time all the way through the flow of food, since you started thawing it the day before, and we'll talk about that a little bit, that until you cook it and reheat it the next day, right? Little ideas for doing this safely is using shallow pans or portioning things into smaller containers. Ice baths are great, like you can just sit a product in ice. You see at the bottom left there that there is those blue things. They're called ice wands or torpedoes. And it's basically a food safe plastic container that you fill up with water, put in your freezer, becomes a big chunk of ice. Then you put it in your foods and it doesn't melt out into your product. You can put it in boiling food, so it has to be food safe. I would not recommend you do this with like water bottles or something like that, because you don't know if this is going to leach any plastic chemicals into your food, right? You have to be very careful. But these guys are a fantastic tool to accelerating the cooling down process and having our food spend the least amount of time in the temperature danger zone. When we talk about thawing, it's the same rationale, right? Like, how do I do this without having my food spend too much time in this zone? The safest way possible to do this is in the refrigerator. It involves some planning because you need to know what you're making tomorrow night for dinner, right? So if I'm going to make, let's say, barbecue chicken tomorrow night, I can take some chicken legs out of my freezer today, from my freezer at -18 to my fridge at 4 degrees. Then it's never going to go into the temperature danger zone as it thaws, right? So that will be the safest practice. If you're a little bit of a rush, you can do run it under cold running water. Keyword here is cold because it's tempting if you're in a hurry to do it with hot water or lukewarm water. But what's going to happen is that you're going to warm up a portion of your product. Let's say you have a big turkey, put it in a sink and you fill up that sink with hot water. The outside layer of your turkey is going to be in the temperature danger zone. It's going to warm up really fast and thaw for hours before the core, the center of your big bird is going to be thawed, right? So you're exposing the outer layer of that bird to the temperature danger zone where bacteria will grow and reproduce for long periods of time. So always cold water, and you can keep that food, even though it's going to be a longer process, it always stays below or very close to 4 degrees. You can thaw foods as part of the cooking process. This means that it'll go from frozen to cooked very fast. So it'll go through the temperature danger zone very fast and with little time for bacteria to grow and reproduce. And lastly, the microwave. If you thaw food in the microwave, you have to continue cooking it forward because now you raise the temperature of that product to an unsafe temperature. And if you don't do it right away, then there's going to be a lot of growth and reproduction there before you deal with that. So these are your 4 ways for thawing food safely. Really quickly, because I am not a server, but I thought this graphic was very interesting to look at. Use your logic, right? To me, the most single piece of this slide here is never touch any part of the plate or utensil or cup that the customer's mouth or the food is going to touch. How many times have you seen a server carry a plate like that with their thumb on top of it? Or I've been to pubs where they brought me a bunch of glasses, holding them all from inside the glasses, as you see on the 3rd one down from wrong. So again, like if we think of what touch what, and when we're discussing cross-contamination, this is another great example. I don't want to see anybody touching the plate where my food is because I don't know where their hands are. I assume that they're clean because they are a service and they have to do this training and they have years of experience, but I don't know that that everybody is keeping to the same standard. So I don't want anybody's fingers in my glass or in my coffee cup, right? So it's just common sense, right? Like try not to touch the parts of the dishes, utensils that are designated for the food. Then lastly, I wanted to touch a little bit on Canada's food date labeling system. This is a subject that is very relevant for second harvest because the consequences of this issue create a huge amount of food waste. So we're just going to really quickly touch on it and then connect it to what we were talking today. First, I want to say that there is no government regulation for about food date labels in Canada. So second, this is left to the manufacturers to create a conservative date label that is mainly used for rotation purposes. As we discuss how important it was for us to keep our product moving, in the private sector, the manufacturer who's making this product, they also want to keep their food moving, not only because it's going to maybe pass that date, but because they need to continue to make money. So they want to generate this I lose my words in English sometimes. Perception of freshness, right? Like the product is always like only made this week. And third, that us, the consumers, interpret this best before date as an expiry date. So I might not want to be using this product, right? So it's important for us that people understand this a little bit better. And then hopefully some products we don't get to a time where the products get best before date. That's accumulating too much food. But and we can get to a better spot and avoid as much food waste going into landfills and as possible moving forward. So then what is a best before date? Best before dates are given by the product manufacturer, as I said before. They represent the estimate peak quality of and freshness of the product. Estimate peak quality of the product. So is not a food safety indicator. It doesn't mean that, let's say this milk here says April 30th. It doesn't mean that the milk is unsafe to consume after April 30th. And also, April 30th is only a date that is that has value for as long as this product is still sealed. The moment I open this product, there's a whole bunch of other players that come into effect. If there is time and temperature and what is flying around your kitchen that fell into that container. So a lot of other players come into place once you open a sealed package, right? But the date, if it's a best before date, it's not a food safety indicator, neither it is an expiry date. So that sets us up for the next slide. What is an expiry date? In Canada, there is only 5 products that have an expiry date. And you see them here. They are, I have a list of their commercial. So you see here, they are nutritional supplements, and these are like whey powder and stuff like that for folks who are growing muscles. We have baby formula or human milk substitute. You've seen Enfamil before. Formulated liquid diets like Ensure or Boost. Meal replacements like a Cliff Bar. And pharmacist sold foods for low energy diets. There is no commercial brand for this because you actually need a doctor's prescription. All of these products are actually meant to support health. So if the manufacturer has put an expiry date on it, what it means is that it no longer has that nutritional value that needed for that for the purpose that it was consumed. In which case, if we eat it or consume it after it's been expired, potentially I am not nourishing the body with the things that either the doctor recommended or, right? My body is not getting the sufficient nutrients and it could be potentially very dangerous. So again, we stand by the 5 products that are that have an expiry date in Canada, because this could seriously compromise your health if you consume them past their date. Okay, as we talk about food date labels in Canada, I also wanted to show you these resources. I put a little link there, and we can probably put it on the chat box as well if anybody's interested. But on our e-learning courses and our training and education parts of our website, you're going to find lots of different resources. They make great little posters for your kitchen, or for learning, or for transmitting to bringing on board, as we said, part of the building a culture in your organization, you know, for volunteers, for anybody who you would like to bring along and or show this information. We have one that we've generated ourselves at Second Harvest as well. You'll find it in the same spot. So that's basically what I wanted to do. Now, we have very little time left, so let me continue moving forward. I wanted to finish today with a take-out home message, and we'll start from the last thing we saw and move back to our beginning. When we're thinking about best before dates and the safety of the product that we're about to consume, use your senses, please. Like, look at it, smell it, look at it. You will to determine that it's safe. Look at the packaging. Is the packaging in good shape? Does it have like stains, watermarks, tears, rips? Is there signs of pests that might have gone in, and scratches, or right? So use your senses, evaluate the situation. And of course, if it's yogurt that is 5 years best before its date, most likely it's safe to say, right? But if it's a week best before its date, smell it, see what it's like. Our bodies usually tell us if it's poisonous, yeah? Second, be sure to always store, cook, cool, and thaw food to the appropriate temperature. Remember, keep hot food hot, cold foods cold, and that goes a long way. Be aware of what touches what. Again, another really very simple thing to remember and to think about the cross-contamination aspect. And lastly, keep yourself and everything else that comes in contact with food clean, to prevent bringing outside things of the kitchen into your food production. Right now, I'd like to see if my colleague Krish here can send out the next poll. If we have the last one, not number 2, number 3. There we go. Thank you very much, Krish. Folks, please take a second to answer this, and then we'll open the chat for questions and answers if you have. As you do this real quick too, I wanted to let you know we have another workshop coming next week. And here is what it's about. It's about food storage. I will be presenting, and it's going to basically learning about all the different techniques and storage areas in our houses or organizations, and how to manage them to the best, to preserve the food the best possible. I have some great ones coming in March by Krish, who is attending to your chat box today, about eating well on a budget and nutrition. So please keep an eye on our channels, and we'll come to you with new materials all through the year. Okay, does it sound like we're almost there? And please, I'm going to start monitoring the chat box in case you have any questions. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry I was rushed. I just really wanted to share as much as I could in this regard through my experience and also my time here at Second Harvest. I wish you all safety and wellness and health. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll look at the chat box if you have any questions. 55. Okay. So I was answering some questions. Okay, folks. If that is all, then thank you very much for coming in. I don't see any more questions coming in. We really appreciate your participation today. So thank you very much for coming. And yeah, and we look forward to seeing you again in one of our next presentations. Keep an eye on our speaker series. They're coming through to you throughout the year. Thank you very much. My name is Norberto. Thank you very much, Krish, for helping out today. And we will see you next time.